Economic hardship leads to political extremes. Japan. Japan experienced economic success in the 1920s, and the victories of the Democratic Allies led many to believe that democracy was the wave of the future. This changed when the onset of the Great Depression in the early 1930s. Japan, with very limited essential resources like food, coal, oil, depended heavily on foreign trade. When the world's markets crashed, so did Japan's luxury market. More importantly, their silk market. With starvation running rampant through Japan, ambitious nationalists claimed that the embracement of Western values had caused the enormous levels of suffering. High ranking military officials argued that the problems Japan faced was due to a lack of space and resources. With 65 million people crowded on four islands, officers insisted that Japan needed to expand their empire via conquest and colonization. Japan set their eyes on Manchuria. They did this because they thought Manchuria offered enough land for farming, room for colonization, and a rich array of resources. The Japanese military's success in Manchuria gave them the influence required to practically take over the country. Economic hardship leads to political extreme. Russia. In 1914, World War I begins, and Russia is at war with Germany. The working class and peasants make up the bulk of their army. The Russian soldier was usually very ill equipped, with poor winter wear, low food, and old rifles. In 1917, the Russian people were very mad at Tsar Nicholas II. Not only had he gotten Russia into a war that they didn't want to partake in, but he had also left the Russian people to go lead the war, leaving Rasputin and the Tsarina to take over Russia. They were also low on food, and communist revolutions were starting to begin. In 1917, Tsar Nicholas II abdicates from the throne, leaving power up for grabs in Russia. After the Tsar, a new government was put in place with two separate political parties, the Provisional Government and the Petrograd Soviets. At this point, the Bolsheviks, led by Vladimir Lenin, a section of the Marxist Russian Social Democratic Labor Party, the eventual Communist Party of Russia, was on the come up. Lenin had a simple slogan which brought lots of people to his side: peace, bread, and land. At this point, Lenin's clout raised exponentially. On November 6th and 7th, the Bolsheviks, led by Lenin, launched a coup against the provisional government, storming the Winter Palace, ending the provisional government, and taking full power for themselves. The communist Bolsheviks end up taking complete control of Russia.
Economic hardship leads to political extremes. Italy. Before Mussolini came to power, Italy was suffering from inflation and high unemployment. There were frequent labor strikes among unhappy workers, and a general fear of communism throughout all of Italy. There was little nationalism from Italians due to said issues. In October 1922, Mussolini was appointed prime minister by King Victor Emmanuel III and asked to form a new government. He quickly changed his name or title to Il Duce, meaning the leader. Mussolini promised to fix all of Italy's issues, make the trains run on time, and restore the former glory of the Roman Empire. Mussolini's ideals particularly appealed to those affected by and suffering from Italy's economic problems, and garnered mass support as a fascist leader. Economic hardship leads to political extremes. Germany. Germany was affected heavily by the Treaty of Versailles. They were put to shame through the Guilt Clause, lost 10% of their land, and were forced to pay large reparations to cover damages done during the war. The treaty also ruled that the German army was to be limited to 100,000 men. In 1923, Adolf Hitler attempted to gain power through means of force with the Beer House Push. This was ultimately unsuccessful. Germany experienced economic growth during the 1920s under Chancellor Stresemann. Hitler's views were no longer relevant during this time, as there wasn't much economic hardship, so he stayed mostly silent. Caused a loss of resources as railways were being tampered with to prevent movement of materials. In 1929, the stock market crashed, causing the USA to seize their loans to Germany, devastating Germany's economy in one night and causing hyperinflation. Hitler and the fascists finally speak up to the topic, as there is much civil unrest. Hitler uses Jewish people as a scapegoat, saying the war would have been successful had it not been for the Jews. This method is used throughout Hitler's reign to misdirect the population. In 1933, Hitler is appointed Chancellor by President Hindenburg and uses the system and Germany's fears to take power.